This is Drew Spence from the Dynamic Universe. For Postwork this week, we're looking at a comic series called UnitM. It's about a team of superpowered monsters, which is what they're called in this universe. Pretty much anyone with superpowers seems to be termed a monster, and there's a level of prejudice or racism against monsters in this world. So you sort of have characters dealing with the way society views them as being outcasts. You've seen that before with mutants, and also they have paranormals and other entities. But you get the idea that there's basically an under thread of prejudice going on where the regular humans don't like this group of superpowered beings, and some are enlisted to dispense justice, and that's what this series is about. It's a free webcomic. You can see the link in the YouTube video link. You'll be able to see it. And for this book, before I talk about like adding my own little touch, first let me say two things. Number one is that I try not to go against stylistic choices or writing choices, because that's more like a critique of the book itself, and this is more additive. Secondly, I don't consider what I'm going to do an improvement. That the goal is not to quote unquote improve some book, as if my role is to make your stuff better. It's basically just unlock new ideas and let you take it from there as I add my little sensibility of Postwork. And again, story choices and stylistic choices, I try to avoid those as much as possible, because I feel like that's up to the creator himself to decide the direction and tone of his book. With that said, I do need a little bit of context, so I sort of have to read a few pages before so I can get the idea of the action. So I'm sort of scanning through it. So we have the two characters that are meeting. They're going to be the main detectives or justice dispensers in this one, and they're talking to their commander, this buxom character that they're talking to, and she's explaining to them their mission. So a couple of weird things about it is that when I read comics as a creator, everything makes sense to me, and I can bend my imagination to force things to make sense. Unfortunately, when it comes to readers, I've noticed that a lot of them don't really put a heavy effort in understanding exactly what you're showing them or telling them. So when I read a book, I try to do a skim. And a skim read is when I just read a book real quick and I just go through the pictures as quick as possible and I just scan through it, as if I just want to get the meat of the story and not really study. And sometimes that's what causes these really simple trips that tend to happen, and I try to avoid them. And I've had that challenge myself, where you read your book with someone over their shoulder, and they seem to want to ask you a question. Like every page, they have a question about something, whether it makes sense or not. Like for this one, you know, their boss is on the tablet giving them the mission instruction. So I see her on the tablet in the first frame, and they're reacting to the mission. And then in this third panel in the middle, she is in full 3D out in the open. And this at first confused me, because she's sitting on the top of the panel with the tablet that the character is holding. So at first I was wondering, like, where is this happening? Where is this occurring? Because there's no background. My first thought was, this a holographic projection? What is this? But it's actually like a shot or wherever the character is making this recording. When I did this in my 4/6, I showed Rosa talking through a communicator with Fire Destiny. That's the Medusa story. And I kind of had to show Rosa in her entire suite to show she's in an office sending out this communication. I don't know if in previous episodes we've seen this backdrop or we know where she's sending this message from, because somewhere there must be a camera recording her to send over this tablet. And when you remove that part of it, because it may have happened in an earlier book, just me scanning through this now, I was first hit with a thought of wondering what was happening in this scene. And I had to kind of go back over it and be like, okay, this is a shot inserted of her someplace else making the recording. So that's one of the things I sort of just noticed at first. They're talking, they meet with local law enforcement, who basically hit them with a slur. I guess the word monsters is not an official comfortable term that everyone has, but the cops use it. You know, we do get a funny parallel here. I'm gonna highlight some nice thing about the writing. It's basically two officers, and of course, you know, the joke later on is people of color, because, you know, he's Afro-American and this one is a purple character with orange hair or blue. So it's kind of funny that these are quote unquote people of color, also the monsters. So you get the whole line, you know, these two identical, generic, you know, bland, blanked characters. So it's kind of funny when you sort of see that happening, that they've already drawn the parallels in. So that's a little bit of a clever writing thing that he's done in this book. Okay, so they're basically given the mission that there's two two twin characters with power that can replicate themselves. So you can basically see copies of the same character. If you hit the main one, it takes out all of the copies, and the copies could be any size. So that's the mission that these two characters are on. One can apparently fly. The other one has some sort of energy projectile, a barrier system. So they're basically having a little bit of a discussion about it. You know, we get the usual snarkiness where like the characters have a lot of nicknames for each other. You know, that's a common writing thing, that everyone has like a little sly sense of humor. This is a nice effect here we've got where they're looking through some sort of device that they can see it. Like, you know, I don't see the device. Maybe they're carrying it, or the binoculars are here in his hand. So he's able to see them, and he's basically zoomed in. So they realize they're going to come up with a plan. We're going to get the two, you know, and they're debating whether they need to take them in custody or not. Are they really bad guys? Have they been framed for something? So, you know, they're basically, one wants to just run in and fight. The other one is sort of thinking we should sort of, you know, bide our time and get some information first. So with that, they go in on the mission. You know, they basically confront, you know, the clones and also the twins. Curse words I edited out. You know, it's funny to see the two characters reacting very similar with the two different experiences. So this is a nice little layout of the way the page flows, and it's cool to see, you know, he flies over, and then behind the rock is one of the characters. The DOF effect is used a lot. You know, that's one of the things that CGI artists tend to use a lot for their depth. We use depth of field where, you know, the closest object is rendered in full detail, and the further you go into the background, it's blurred. So that's a common effect that's being used here. And the battle ensues. This is super clever. This scene that, I believe they're on a ranch, so the one of the clones just picks up the entire ranch, and out from underneath it pour lots of little clones of the fighting characters, which is really nice, and he's surrounded by them. You know, good pose work. This is actually difficult to do in a lot of the 3D programs because this eats a lot of resources. So you need a beefy machine or have to plan your scenes kind of carefully. So this is actually pretty ambitious to put all these characters in the shot. I don't think it was done with a composite render where they're rendering it in layers and each one is a separate one. This looks like it was pretty much all together. But that's good there. The next scene, we have watching the characters fight. Anytime he takes one out, you get that it turns to green before it dispenses or is dispelled. So we sort of see that he's hit one here and it turns green. So you sort of get a little action sequence. You see his main weapon, which is this, you know, this orange energy spike that we have. The other character, you know, evades the grip, turns around, shoots a blast into the chest. You know, this one is now fighting a whole bunch of the other ones. When this one gets hit, you know, the rest are forced to dissipate, so it's not over yet. You know, we have a little bit of conversation when one is talking and gaining information, the other is embroiled in combat. One gets grabbed, the angel type character gets thrown, the other one gets punted, which is, you know, very well done. Gets punted off into the distance. This is great placement of the camera right at ground level. You know, obviously there's always going to be that continuity where he went from laying down underneath one boot to suddenly being farther back in the distance in a sitting position. But regardless of that little, you know, it's a creative license to sort of just build this scene, which works so well. You could forgive anything because this just looks, the camera angle, the placement, just the layout. This was an excellent, excellent use right here. That was awesome. So the two characters both land, and again, it's the parallel that he's building with the story that, you know, they're both falling for different reasons, but they both land, you know, next to each other, and it's like, okay, you know, this plan isn't going good. So they sort of regroup, have their discussion, and they're going to try it again. And now we begin to get to the part where we're getting to sort of what I call, not really the climax of it, but this is another good sequence coming up. So they're having a discussion. It turns a little bit, you know, point heavy, the little lull in between, but now we get to them unified. They're gonna go in, and this is one of the 2 pages near the end of the current section of the book that I decided I would go in and take a look at some post work. So we have them flying in, one's carrying the other, and he appears to throw him, and as he's flying in, the other shoots the blast, and one of the characters dives in. In the next frame, he appears to fly through the character, land on the ground, and it makes the large one dissipate while the other tackles the other character, hits her from the back with a flying swoop, and this character causes the impact causes the rest to also dissipate or disappear. And I believe that is the end of what the comic is up to now. So really, you know, again, Postwork is one of those things where you could make decisions on how deep you want to go. But for this one, we're going to take a look at some of the panels. Let's pick a page or two and take a look at some of the artwork and see what we can come up with. So one of the pages that stuck out to me, at least, was this one, where I was sort of looking at this page and I wish there was a little bit more dynamic happening. Of course, as a creative, you get to make decisions. You know, there's a sky that's relatively like a wash, just a light blue wash. Sometimes if this is supposed to be Earth, you wish there'd be a little bit of clouds here, or just remove the sky if it's not needed. You know, if we don't need a true sky, you know, we don't really need that. And then for this panel, it was a little interesting that this feels like it happens before, after this. So I would sort of swap these two. So let's play around with this. I'm just gonna give myself a little bit more room to play with. So we're gonna just make a small change in the resolution so I could do a little bit of cutting. We're gonna duplicate the layer itself so I can get this on a separate layer. And I'm gonna play with some of the moments in it. I like this scene, and this pose is very dynamic. And this is an awesome, awesome scene. So I think I'm gonna take that one first. So in case I ever need to go backwards, we always want to make copies of everything that we're playing with. So I'm going to make a layer, new layer via copy. Now I've got that layer, that picture as an isolated thing, and we want to sort of zoom in. Now I could zoom in, but I'm actually going to free transform just because, you know, I know we're looking at this on a web screen. We sort of want to get to as close as possible. And if you go too tight with a resolution, we're going to begin to lose some of the sharpness of the image. And normally what we could do is, normally I would spend a lot more time actually doing the cutting. But in this particular case, I know you guys are watching live. We want to move it along. So just as an idea, I'm just going to do some cutting and cut the characters out. Now, obviously in the 3D software, whether it be Poser or Daz, I'm sure you can actually render this scene without the backdrop. And this could have been rendered without any sort of frame or box around it, and you'd have the characters floating. So this is one of the ways that I could have actually just gone in. I could also done this through color, where I could have actually changed the contrast. Let me show you that in a second. I'm just gonna do a rough cut here so that you get the idea of what we're doing. So we're just gonna cut out along the wings. You get the idea of this, that we're just gonna cut the character out. You get what I'm saying. So this would be what I would do. I'm gonna cut the character out. And now we have on a cut, we're gonna feather our selection. This is an older version of Photoshop. I think this is mine is CS5 still. So I'm gonna go layer, new via copy. And even that, I'm gonna copy to a new layer. Now I've gotten rid of most of the background around this character. And I just kind of needed this for my shot. So now when I go back and I place the page back, let's go with the full background page, shrink it back down a bit. I have this character breaking out on top. And I have a much bigger image that I can now sort of use. And I didn't really need as much as the background as I did. I get a bit more action happening. We're gonna shrink it down some to sort of scale it where I want it. You know, now I have something a little bit different happening. We're gonna come back to this border on the bottom in a minute. But now I have something a bit more that he's breaking out. And I can actually place it right about there. And I'm gonna leave that for now, and at least now he's bounding out the box, and it seems a little bit more action-packed. For this background, I'm gonna actually work with the layer on top. It just feels to me that this should be occurring before this. Like if, I know he's released them and he's probably flying down and swooping down, and if there's gonna be a beam, but it just feels to me that if you look at the next page, I'll pull that back up. Let's pull up the next page that comes after this. It looks as if the next sequence is him hitting with the beam sort of at the same time. The beam shoots through and he breaks through, which basically takes out this one. So it just seems like, you know, the beam is fired here, then where is the beam in this shot? If this is the sequence, it's like, okay, you fired the beam, it came out. I just think it should go in reverse, and I would like to see the beam aiming at the person. You could have put a target here, just something that it feels, I understand in mathematic sequence, he's been released, and he fired the beam, and the beam is flying underneath, and they both sort of hit at the same time. It just still feels, as far as the sequence goes, this scene has the most tension and action. So I would have probably still reversed them and put this scene here. Long way of saying that. So let's duplicate that layer. And let's go in and actually see what happens if we chop that up. And I take this scene from here. I'm going to take this scene from this side. Make a new copy of it. I want to move this over to here. We're going to cheat a little bit by not even recreating the background. We really could have done that and gave ourselves a little bit of the framework, but we didn't need to do that. This is going to be rough today because we're just going to have to get this out and let you guys take a look at this. And I could cut it a little bit better, but again, I'm not going to zoom in because we're looking at it on my full-size monitor. Doesn't make a difference. And I'm going to grab it from this layer. And now we have these scenes sort of happening that I can control them. I'm going to place this where it belongs, I believe in my head, at least on the far right. And we're going to take this one and move it to the left. And I'm going to sort of sandwich it in so it sort of fills that. And I'm going to resize it to let it eat up that extra space here. And we're going to cheat a little bit, and we're not going to redraw his borders. We're just going to get the idea across that he's flying and there's this beam going. And now at least I feel like this is the most tension-filled moment, that he's hurling down and gonna land in the back of the character. And I feel like that to me is a bit more dramatic. So we could clean a lot of this up. You know, you understand that I just have him placed here, but let's do a little bit of cleaning. We'll go to this, we'll grab one of our erasers. I'll change the size to a pretty beefy size. And we'll just do a little bit of erasing. If we really do like this bounding box, we would just clean up around it and let this extend into this box, but not completely break the whole thing. So you can see I could just clean it up in areas, and then we get that sort of laser pointer, and I would just clean up. That was too much, but okay. If I sort of let a lot more of that hang out, you can pretty much get the idea of how we can clean this up and let the border come back. We're letting the border of the box below it come back. And in this case, I would just cut around his foot so that that breaks the plane. And again, this is a little bit quick and sloppy, but you get the idea of, you know, just adding a little bit more to that scene by having him break sort of out of the frame. Because even in this case, we didn't really need, you know, all this guy. I love the streaking, which is great that he chucked the purple and let it streak backwards. This does have a sense of real speed happening here, that they're really streaking, which is nice. You know, comics tend to really accentuate that and just really give it to you. So we could do some post work now. So maybe what we'll do, we'll start with our first layer of post work, and let's play with the laser beams first. Let's think about this, what we want to do for the lasers. Maybe we'll just go with energy. We'll use brushes first. I think we'll just go with energy, lightning, something like that. We'll go with something like that, and I'll make a new layer of that. I'll go into my brushes palette. These are Ron Divine brushes, which are available in the Daz Store online. A brush, in the Daz Store, they make post-work brushes, which are good with anything that uses, supports layers. You could use it. These are some lightning effects. You could basically use almost anything for an effect, but we could sometimes just go random. We'll go random with this one first. I see some particles. Let's go with a random set of particles. The reason I'm gonna go with some random particles, I'm gonna pick the color from the actual picture itself. Maybe one of the lighter streaks, and then once I've got something in the ballpark, I think I'm gonna put some lighter energy around the top. So I'm gonna go back to the color, and just lighten it up a little bit. Then go back to the brush, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of energy. I could have grabbed a different one or reverse them, but I'm just gonna go with some energy. And now I've got like some energy blasts emanating from the wing itself. I'm gonna let these streaks hang out. I don't really have a problem with the streaks, but something could be going down the middle to add to the energy. As long as we pick lightning, we're gonna be not super lazy, but a little lazy, and just stick to the effect I've already opened up instead of hunting through my library. And we're gonna look for something else that has a sort of straight line sort of energy to it. Like this is a nice straight line kind of electricity. This is a lightning effect that's a straight line. So I think we're gonna counter this darker color with another lighter color. So we're gonna put in some lightning, and of course I misspell things. I don't really look at what I'm doing when I'm typing. I know what I mean. There's no spell check here. So okay, I'm gonna go with some lightning, a lightning streak. So I have the lightning on a layer by itself, and I'll place it approximately where I want it and give it a couple of taps so that it has a little bit more meat to it. Then I'm gonna, after I lay it down, I think I'll sort of get it close to where I need it to be. Like I kind of like that. That feels like it's heading down the center, and it's a little bit of a cool special effect. And then we need to get this tail. If I want to, I can just erase this tail piece and get rid of it completely. But in the spirit of showing you another way of working, we're gonna go with the warp tool, and I'm just gonna warp the direction of that little lightning tail so that it goes a little bit beyond and straightens out as if there's some sort of origin point here. I'm actually gonna drag it till it's all the way straight. I'm kind of gonna let the lightning fan out in this triangle, and I'm gonna call that good. And then once I have that, we're gonna go back to our eraser, and we'll just erase a little bit because we really do want an origin point. That might have been too much, right? We just need it to go. We'll go into our history, and I'm just gonna bring it back a little bit so that I can really control the ending of it. I just kind of, because I'm gonna put probably some more little bursts in there. So that was that left side lightning. Let's make another layer of lightning. I'll call this the right side lightning. And now I have a right side lightning. I'm gonna grab my brush, and we're just gonna grab, you know, the lightning to the right, right? It just seemed to fit. And we're gonna take it, and I'll place it down here so I could see it clearly. I'm gonna give it a couple of taps to darken it. And I'm gonna free transform it. And we're gonna move this lightning to the opposite side. We wanna tilt it and have it come out from this other wing. So this other wing shoots a lightning blast right about there. I can kind of actually even dig that it cut across and then went back down. Lightning should be a little unpredictable. I can leave that. I'm comfortable with that. I think that works. I think I'm gonna leave the color to adjust the purple laser. I don't think I'm going to play with that too much. I'm going to, let's see, I have all my energy balls here. Let's just go with the lightning itself. Let's just go with these two lightnings. I'm gonna duplicate those lightnings, merge them together, and now I have the two lightnings together on one layer. So I have a copy of them. I'm gonna put my new copy on top, the top two, and I'm gonna get the name better. So this is left lightning, and I have a right side lightning, and beneath I have all lightnings merge. And I have all my lightnings merged, and what I'm gonna do is put some effects on that lower lightning. So I'm gonna pick a outer glow, and then if I leave it with a yellow, I'm gonna go with a hard light, keep it hard so that you guys can see it. Increase the opacity, make it a little bit darker. We're gonna go with a precise light, and I get a heavy outline. But I'm gonna let it spread some around my lightning. I'm gonna let it spread some and give it a little bit of size. And maybe the color yellow isn't the right color. Usually you get like some interesting pinks and reds. Maybe we'll just give it a little bit of red. A little bit of red to dance with it. Yeah, a little bit of red to dance. Don't want to overdo it. But now we have a little bit of nice energy happening from there. So now we have some nice energy shooting out. If I get rid of it, that is the lightning that we started with. That's the one that we can sort of end with. And if I merge them together, it will kill the effect, but we're gonna keep this effect handy because we're probably gonna use it a few more times. So also for everything else, I'm gonna save my work every so often. I'm gonna call this the live edit. And we're gonna save that. And now we need to find a lightning strike that can sort of travel down this path. A nice lightning strike. We could clean this up at any point, but for now, we want to get a nice little lightning burst to fly down here. We want to change it up, so we're gonna grab a little bit heavier streak. This one is heavier. Again, this is Ron Lightning and Effects available in the Daz Store. We're using some Photoshop brushes. We're gonna make a new layer for this. Let's call this the bottom lightning. This is my bottom lightning, and I throw it down here a few times. Then I'm gonna free transform it. And don't forget, these brushes come with styles of their own, so you actually don't have to do the extra work on top of laying it down, and you can actually use the styles that come with the lightning and apply them. They're very colorful, similar to this kind of stuff. Very, very nice effects that really bring out the energy of it. So in this case, we're gonna just copy the layer style and paste it on the bottom lightning. And now this has the attributes of the previous layer, and we're gonna do some, I think we're gonna do some cleaning up. The dilemma will be that you're gonna get tails that come out on the bottom, that we're gonna get tails at where this lightning goes, but that's all right. We're comfortable with that. That the lightning will be there. We're not gonna let it head outside our beam though. So we're gonna eliminate the lightning that runs past that large wide purple beam. So we're gonna keep the lighting inside the streak, and I don't really need to do anything else to it. I've got the nice lightning, I like that. I go to the top and we have the bottom lightning, which is that. I'm comfortable with that. The bottom lightning is looking good. I'm liking that. We have the lightnings merged from the top. That's that effect. We're gonna clean that up. So we wanna just eliminate some of that runs onto this scene. Some scenes it looks good when the energy sort of merges from one to the other. In this particular case, I really don't think so. That we don't really need it. So I'm just gonna clean that up. I don't really mind it being over the black line. That's not real. And we're gonna add a little tail here. This is just attention to detail. This is, we'll take it from the merge lightning, which is this layer. I'm just gonna be real lazy and just grab a tiny triangle from here. And we're gonna call this top triangle lightning. And I'm gonna take that top triangle lightning and just throw it just back here. Just for consistency's sake, because I know little details like that will annoy me when I'm scanning a comic. If I'm just reading it, I don't notice things like that, and it's no big deal. But sometimes when I'm scanning the book on another day, and I'm just marveling at some of the artwork, little things like that will sort of pop out to me, and I'll sort of notice them and be like, hey, the lightning isn't in the back part of the beam. But, you know, we could go further with this and add extra stuff coming out of here and really dazzle it. We might as well, because we're here, even increase this part of the beam. You know, let's increase the origin point. So we're gonna make this quick though, 'cause I want to move on to some of the other idea. We'll call this origin beam point. Doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as you can remember or it's consistent. So I'm back in my brushes. We're gonna look for those round ones. I know I saw some round ones. Where did I see round stuff? There's one of these is round. Am I in the right? Oh, here we go. So we have some round energy type craziness. So let's get that going. We're gonna put the origin one on top, even though it might be further back. Let's decide a size for it. Let's decide a size. I like that size. And maybe we should pick another color. Like something much different. He gave us a light blue sky. I would like to see something different. I don't want to go with just another purple. And red is really like related to it, where I could believe the red was part of the same energy emanation. So I don't want to go too far out the realm. but a nice reddish purple, right at the hint of red and purple would be nice. Let's see what we get. That's kind of okay. We could dig with that. Let's grab another one just for symmetry purposes. We'll grab another one. We need to scale it to a similar size, and we place another one here. And that even breaks the plane of the page. For a source point, we should probably get rid of this initial streak that's happening here, because it's, you know, if this is around the beam, you sort of wouldn't have it cutting into the beam itself. It should be the energy like almost behind the wing that's coming out. So I'm even going to get rid of the one that's in front of the wing. I'm even going to get rid of the pieces in front of the wing. You know, of course we would zoom in. We could do that and take a look at what we've got. We could zoom in and see how we're looking up close. That might have been one of the better ideas. We should have been doing this. But yeah, we get some nice energy that's coming off the wings. Looks like there's action happening. We can keep cleaning up a bit. We don't have to clean up every little detail, but we'll clean up some of these, clean up some of this, clean up. It even has the motion from the jitter of my hand clicks. We even have it being a little bit blurred and jittery. But I don't think we need blur for this. We're gonna keep that. A sound effect could have sat here if this beam shoots with some kind of noise effect. It might have been a cool thing to happen, that we'd have had some sort of sound here, you know, but be that as it may. What else do we have? We'll play a little bit with this now. Now that we've added that, we need this streaking. So we like the idea of this character, you know, flying in and needs some kind of energy that he's streaking in. So we'll stick with some regular Photoshop techniques. We'll leave brushes for a minute. We'll just call this light streaks. I could have copied or dragged, use a blur to pull off of his character, which we've seen in the book in other areas. I'm not going to do that in this case. I am just going to, what am I going to do? I am going to, what would be best here? I think, let's go with some streaks. Let's go with some, let's see what happens what we do with streaks first, and then we'll play with the streaks after. So I've got my layer streak. Let's start with that first. And we're going to get a nice streak. So this is going to be his character streaking. So I'm sort of going to give it just enough. I kind of don't want to cut the foot too much. I kind of want this to be where the streak of energy is. So I'm going to be happy with that. I'm going to give it a white sort of line. So this is the streak of my character. And then we're going to give it a little bit of Gaussian blur. I hope that's pronounced right. So we give it a little bit of blur that we get a little bit of a halo happening. Do I need the whole thing? I think so. So we've got our streaky character going in. And for my burst, I could have done this with rays also, but we're gonna clean this up a little bit. We want to clean it up a little. I should probably copy this to another layer before I start messing around. And just make sure I don't go so far that I can't get back. But we've got our little streak. We're not going to put one like right from his butt. That might be a little crazy to have a streak like, you know. Is that how he's propelling himself through the air? You know, that'd be crazy. But we have a nice little streak here. You know. Nice little energy streak. We don't really need like on his butt type streak. But he's got a streak coming off the character. And then we're going to go with a line streak. We're going to grab our same paintbrush, but I kind of want a hard brush. I want a hard brush. Let's see. What am I missing? A streaky streak. A streaky streak. Maybe, we'll go with like a streak from here and there, a there and a there. You know, like the angle should sort of be consistent. Oops. The angle should sort of be consistent that is making a wave pattern. Sometimes I would actually do this with a measuring type device or tool, but we're not really concerned with that at this point. I kind of dig that he's flying and projecting. You don't want to overdo it, because don't forget, we haven't even done the beam that's going to be zeroing in. So I could, let's just use the assets that we have, right? We're not going to redraw our own purple streak. We're going to take the one from the piece of art itself. So I've selected a layer, which is going to be the bottommost backing layer. Actually, we should take it from here. We're going to take it from here, and we're going to grab this streak. So we're going to just go in. We're going to grab a piece of this streak. The shape doesn't really matter that much. Be a copy. And now we have the purple beam. Purple beam. And now with our purple beam, we're going to take it and we'll position it behind everything. And now it would be as if the beam is being fired and he's following the path of the beam. So we could let it disappear in his chest area. I believe it's skew. I think skew is the one that pulls the edges in. Yep. Distort could have done this too. But just for now, that's like the easiest, quickest way to do it. And this should be sitting underneath the light beam. So you sort of can get the idea that the beam, he's sort of flying along the path of the beam. And now once I put that purple beam in there, you can see the white streaks we were talking about. So we need to clean this up. I'm going to duplicate it. Let's save our work. And let's cut off one of these purple streaks. And let's do the same cleaning job we did last time. We want to grab our eraser. Slightly bigger this time. And we want to clean up a little bit. We want to clean up around it. Too much. We want to clean up here. That's where we want to clean. And then clean up here. And then clean up down here. I could shrink the brush, but you get the idea. That we're just letting him in. If we let parts of it, it's almost as if he's passing through the beam too. Like if he's almost inside the beam. And now we've got him streaking down towards this character. And you can still see the minions behind, minions underneath. We could also lighten it too. We could also lighten it. And now you get the idea that he's really streaking fast. Now to enhance it also, what we can do is we have this. Where is this? This is here. And this is covering it. So we're going to duplicate this layer. We're going to duplicate this layer. Now I have this on top. We're going to call this motion. We're going to put a motion blur on this. He already has the DOF where you can see like the background is unfocused and his character is heavily focused. Also, you know what? This beam is so sharp and crispy. I don't think I want it that crispy. We're going to go back to a little bit of blur on the edges of the beam. Nothing crazy, just a little bit more of a beam. I know the other ones are very hard edge, but I feel like I just want this one to be a little bit looser. And then my white streaks are now super rigid compared to that. So we're looking for our streaks. We have our light streaks copy. Which one is that? Okay, so this is the hard rigid line one. This is going to take very little blurring to look right. So we're going to really have to go light on the blurring so that I get very barely there lines. There we go. Now I feel like he's streaking. Do I need both sets? If I get rid of that, is less more? Is less more? I think less is more. That looks like stripes when I look at them closely now. All right, we're going to get rid of that. And if you see that, I think we're going to go with that. So we have the character streaking. All right, so back to a little bit of motion. Let's step on the gas here. I've got that. I've got my character floating. What do we have here? The motion. So for this motion, I would kind of like this area to have something going on. So we're gonna go with a filter and a motion filter right now. There's lots of other programs that I've got that do motion. So I think we're gonna just put, this is a very heavy-handed effect, but we're gonna let it go heavy-handed. And what we'll do is we'll control it ourselves by erasing areas of it. We'll save our work again. And this time what we want is only parts of it to be in motion. So like all up here, we don't need any of this motion effect. Like that part of the scene isn't moving. So we're gonna get rid of all of this up here and just trim out. I could have selected and erase or select it and cut, but in this particular case, I'm just gonna actually just do it by hand because the only thing really moving now is him. And this character isn't moving, nor are really the minions, so they don't really need a motion blur to happen. I'm gonna leave the background because it didn't really matter anyway. But for this, I could decide, do I want the bottom half or the top half? And I can play with it. I can clean up the top, and now only the bottom has that. Where the bottom is now motion blurred as if he's streaking, and the top is hard and focused. Also, I could have put action lines going here to show that he's really zeroing in. That's like a comic thing to do, to sort of show all these extra lines. And that's probably where those lines would have gone best, those little streaks that I put in it. So let's see what else we got. Let's do some experimenting. One last effect on top of this, and then we'll move forward with the next page. We just need something that looks interesting. So we're gonna check among our brushes. Special effect brushes. That might not always be a good idea to just, all right, this looks like it paints, I don't know what that's, a rubber ducky. We don't really need a rubber ducky to show up in the scene. A splash is a little bit strange. And let's stick with Ron stuff. What does Ron got? Overlays, steam, spray paint, smoke, shattered glass. That wouldn't be a bad effect to play with. Ripped fabric. Ripped fabric. That's an interesting effect to place on top of it. Light and shadows. Hydro explosion. Let's see what light and shadows is. Let's see what he's got for us. Anything that heads out in a V. That's not bad. These are blinds, like shadows of lights. These are shadow effects. Oh, look what we got here. All right, he's got some nice streaks. Oh, this looks crazy, whatever this is. He's got a light and shadow that looks like it really breaks apart. We have some scatterings. All right, let's take a look at what we got. Let's experiment. What was the thing that we saw that looked nice? This is interesting for energy. We have some choices here. These are streaky. We have some nice streaks. I think I like this one. That's a nice streak there. This could be an impact, right? You can see how that could be an impact. Oh boy. Should I go? I mean, we have little particle effects. We have some hatching. Look at this. This is another strange shape. That could have been some hatching. Some impacts. Let's see what we got. Maybe we'll go with just keep it generic with some light impacts. Maybe just some light impacts, and we'll go with that. So let's make a light impact. We'll go to the top. New layer. We'll call this bronze impact light. And we'll throw one on the set. We'll keep it white for now. See what we get here. Okay. Then we want to freely transform that so it can eat up the energy in the scene. Not fully happy. This actually looks like an impact area. This looks a little bit too much like the actual impact. So this is one of those experiments where it's not giving me quite what I'm looking for, because this actually looks like the hit. So you've learned that if I actually place this here, it's going to look like the actual impact. This does look like the character is streaking and it hasn't made contact. And if I place anything here, it's going to look like they've hit. The only thing I could do is place the lines way out here to show that streaking, like he's really angling in, and put the lines out here. And that would probably be the last touch that I would sort of add. Everything else I kind of liked. The streaking is nice. you know, you don't need the extra attention of clouds now that this character is sort of broken this frame, and you sort of get the idea that this is like almost jumping out the box. So I think I'm gonna call this good for now. I see we're at the 40 something minute mark. So let's start to wrap this up and jump to the next page. This is pretty much good for now. Let's see, what do we have before? So this is the before, and this is the after of the shot. So this was the actual page before, and this is our page after. Page before, page after. So I basically just took the page and just flipped the sides of it. I'll put it over here. And I flipped the sides of it. We could sort of see what we had before and after, that I basically twist the two pages, if that makes sense. So let's go and just pick one other quick thing. We're not going to spend too much then on the next page, because I didn't want to spend, you know, too many hours cutting. What do we have here? Was this one of them? Okay, so on impact, I think we're actually probably stop there, because this page was pretty simple. Yeah, I think we're gonna stop with this. I think that was that page. The next scene is the impact of both the beam and the character shooting through. You know, then he comes out and he has this really dynamic landing, which looks great. You know, probably debris and stuff could have gone here. Nothing that you haven't seen me do in some of the other ones, but this is good. And then the flying character comes in, catches the other half of the twins, and that knocks out the other one. So, you know, the fight is escalating nicely, and we're gonna have some good action. So let's wrap with that. I'm Drew Spence from the Dynamic Universe. I do a Postwork series that's available in the Daz Store. I do a webinar where about once a month you donate your art to us, and myself and a group will take your artwork and we'll go over it live. I will do post work on it and usually play around with it, play around with effects. Sometimes I show off some software pieces that are good for special effects, or I highlight products in the Daz Store that are good to use for special effects and adding post work touches, whether it be overlays, brushes. There's actually a lot of drawing tools you can draw and paint on top of your artwork. There's filters that we can put the artwork through to give it different cartoon looks and just different artsy, you know, expressive looks that we have. What else? I think that's it. I'm Drew Spence from the Dynamic Universe. This comic is Unit M. It is a free web comic that you can read. The links will be inside my video. I suggest everybody check it out, give the author feedback. Yeah, and then join me live. We'll be doing this. I think I'll put the contact information in this video description. So if you want to send me artwork, I can hang on to it. And during one of these next classes, I can take your artwork and, you know, do some post work on it. Give me feedback. We like that. You can subscribe to the channel. Dynamic Music on most forms of social media, my Twitter, my Instagram, where I upload artwork. The comic that I do is 4/6. You'll also should see that link in it. That's about it. I will catch everyone. Thank you for UnitMCcomics for allowing me to work on your artwork, and we'll cut this video up and we'll chop it up in the future. Thank you everyone for watching.